Sweet. So this is going to be a unique experience. This is the first time I've ever presented in my tracky bottoms. This is the first time I've ever presented with a dog in the bed. So that's a privilege in itself. But first of all, hey everyone, I'm Joe. I'm the founder of something called the Marketing Meetup. For those of you who aren't familiar, we host events for marketers. We used to do that in person, but now we do it primarily online. We've had a series of webinars, and we also run something like Conversation Club, which Link has already spoken about, which is really cool. We're about 15,000 marketers now, so if you want to be part of that, then please do join. I just want to say thank you all so much for your time today. It's a funny old time to be alive, but we're all getting through it, and we're all looking after each other. But I hope you're safe, well and happy and positive and all those things, because we do just need to be looking after each other right now. Today I'm going to be speaking about personal branding, but before I do that, I just need to acknowledge the times. Basically, this is probably the least important thing in the world right now. So, you know, it's got to be viewed within the context of what's going on in the world right now. So, you know, everything that follows is not meaning to sound, you know, silly in the context of the rest of the world, but hopefully you get a lot of value from it nonetheless. So, a quick warning. Personal branding is a douchebaggy term. It is the most horrible term in the world for, you know, I don't know why, you know, it sort of caught on. But what it actually does is house quite a useful concept, a useful idea. And this is one that I've loosely defined as personal branding is the strategic creation and effort placed in the direction of creating an image of an individual in the mind of others. In my opinion, that's best done in an authentic way. Authentic, likewise, is a horrible marketing term, but it just means just be yourself. When we speak about a brand, I think a lot of people have the tendency just to head towards the logo, towards what the website looks like, the sort of visual element of it. But actually, when I'm speaking about branding, I'm speaking about something far more. I'm speaking about how people experience you and your brand. So how you look on LinkedIn, but how you also then experience at a networking event, how your emails look and sound, like how you actually just carry yourself day to day, not just like the pictures that you put out every so often and what your logo looks like. It's a whole bigger experience. We had the privilege of speaking with the global CMO of Siegel and Gale 2 weeks ago. She's called Margaret Malloy, and there's a recording of this particular webinar on the Marketing Meetup blog. She is the world's most phenomenal woman, bar Lenka, but she defines brand as a promise kept. I thought that was really kind and a really sort of nice way of thinking about things, because ultimately when you're looking to establish your personal brand, you're making a statement about the consistency and what you can offer on a regular basis, no matter what happens. So why is it important? What's good about it? Well, the old school method would have been to send out press releases all the time, you know, and you would have hoped and prayed that people would have wrote about you, that you would have got some sort of coverage and seen that in newspapers. But actually what personal branding is an opportunity to own the narrative about you. You can take back control in a very meaningful way. I shouldn't say take back control, what a horrible term. Anyway, and we can see that even Joe average people such as myself, you know, can head out to the world and sort of have an opinion, and people interact with it, which is really cool. That was the Postman, by the way, which is great timing for them. You can see how people like Stephen Bartlett, Anne Hanley, and Gary Vaynerchuk have all built very successful businesses off the back of their own personal brands. What it can mean for all of us is that we have the opportunity for increased reach. We've got a new channel to market. You can offer new business development opportunities, new opportunities full stop, whether it's podcasts, giving talks, etc., and indeed new revenue, as we saw with those previous examples. These are some of the stats from my last year on my LinkedIn. and I'm not professing these to be particularly amazing or world changing or anything like that. But you can see, because I've chosen to engage with LinkedIn in particular as a tactic for my personal branding, then there's been some 1.4 million views on my stuff in the past year alone, which, had I chosen not to engage with these things, that would have been an opportunity lost. And ultimately, my business probably wouldn't have thrived quite as much as it has done in the past year. Now, I should caveat the remainder of this talk. I am very much self-taught when it comes to personal branding, and there's someone far more knowledgeable than me in Ash Jones, who runs a company called Greater Influence. He's likewise done a talk for the Marketing Meetup, but he's the guy behind Stephen Bartlett and his personal brand. He's active on LinkedIn. He's got a website. I just basically search out Ash Jones. He's one of these sort of like really self-effacing people and really doesn't seek the limelight for himself, but he's got the brain the size of planet Earth and knows far more about it than me. So how do we do it? How do we do personal branding? And sorry if you heard my dog lying down again there. Personal branding can be perceived as a bit of a monster. It's one of these things that in people's heads, they make a really big deal of it. But if you want to know the magic behind personal branding, then there's just one thing. There's one bit of magic that you need to remember, and that magic is found in you. Seriously, like, if you're going to take one thing from this talk, it's just be yourself. Honestly, there's nothing crazy difficult about personal branding. All you're doing is being yourself in a public domain. We all want to have an easy life. So the easiest life when it comes to personal branding is just doing you. Now, there was a question that came in beforehand, which was, how you should you be online? And the answer to this is just be as comfortable, just be as you're comfortable with. There's no magic scenario. You've got to do the things that are right for you when it comes to personal branding. The whole point is that it's an embodiment of you. And if you're not feeling comfortable, then you're obviously pushing yourself too far. It's good to sort of push the comfort zone sometimes, but for the most part, just do what you're comfortable with. I think that's really important, and it really should take the pressure off you. But I know that you're here for tips. Everyone always will ignore the just be you bit, and they'll always come for the tips. So here's mine. The first is, you need to set your expectations. My personal branding exercise has been 4 years in the making. And even now, then we're still, I'm only just starting to see like the benefits being reaped from it. So this is going to be something that takes a long, long time. It's consistent effort. You're not going to post on LinkedIn tomorrow and your business isn't going to change on the basis of your personal branding activity, just like that. It's the same as any other branding exercise. It takes a while to get in people's heads. It takes a while for it to be reaffirmed time and time again. There will, of course, be those moments of inflection where your personal brand will grow, will fall, etc., etc. But for the most part, it's a long, sustained effort. The second thing is that I think it's really, really important that we engage with personal branding in a non-salesy kind of way. We're not here to sort of say, look, we've got 10 leads tomorrow or whatever. It's saying, let's measure things on the basis of the amount of people that we can help, and then the revenue and stuff like that follows from that point onwards. Second, so as an exercise, I think it's really important that you actually identify why you want to engage in personal branding in the first place. I think a lot of people identify it as a buzzword, as something they should probably be looking to engage with. But not many people I know have actually said, well, the reason I want to engage with personal branding is XYZ, and for that reason, I'm going to engage in this activity. So just take a moment to sort of reflect on yourself. What is the reason that you'd want to engage in personal branding? And is that fame, fortune? Do you want to give your money away to charity? And then write it down as a mission statement. It can't really have big numbers attached to it, because as we've already established, this is going to be something that's going to happen in the long term. And a lot of the effects are going to be quite intangible. So I'd suggest writing down a mission statement, which is something which is completely intangible, but very much will inspire you to get out of bed in the morning and sort of engage with personal branding as an exercise. Third, establish your target audience. What do those folks want to hear? Now, this is really important because I think when we put ourselves out there, I think there's a temptation, and I do this myself all the time. I really want to be popular and I want to be liked, but ultimately, you're not going to be able to please all the people all the time if you're going to be saying something of any significance. With this in mind, focus on your target audience and realize what they want to hear and go after that. Don't worry if people don't like your personal brand, if that's not the people that you want to help, if that's not the people you want to engage with your business. Ultimately, you don't have to be really, really brash and horrible and stuff like that. But in the world that we live in right now, you've got black and you got white and you got grey in the middle. And grey messages aren't going to cut through. The black and the white will. So you got hate and you got love. And for me, I tend to stick far more in the love category, trying to spread messages of love and helping each other. And I'd probably suggest that will probably be a good solution for you guys too. Fourth, strategy. Sorry, I've just unshared. Let me move that down. Fourth, strategy. Now, this is one of the most important things. What do you want to be known for? So you've realized what your target audience want to hear, which is really, really great. But now you've got to realize what you can offer those folks and what you can offer them, which is going to improve their lives. Align what they want to what you can offer. So literally write down the top 10 things that your target audience need, and then write about the things that you can offer them. Organize these things into content pillars, which solves the biggest problem of personal branding, which is that everyone always says, I don't know what to post. So if you write down your stuff into content pillars, which look a little bit like this, and I did one for Lenka as an example. So she might be once known for social media, small business, kindness, and networking. Then she could write stuff about Facebook, how to run Zoom live sessions and social media stats under the social media column. She could write about small businesses on how to run them, be an experience of a business owner. She wants to be known about kindness, so she speaks about generosity and networking. So you can see how those 4 top level things that Lenka wants to be known about, now she's got a whole bunch of content that can fall underneath that and support those wider goals. So that's a strategy. You've identified that your target audience wants to know about social media, so that's what you're going to offer them. And those are the things that you're going to speak about on a consistent basis. I'd like to add at this point, note that I haven't even spoken about Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. This is the strategy. Those tactics come later. There's a really great blog write-up about content pillars, which it will be available at this link. Lenka will have the slides, which she can share if it's on use to anyone afterwards. I enjoyed reading this blog about social media content pillars. 5, life cycle. So the marketing life cycle is something that's really important and something really dear to my heart. So many people say they want to quote unquote do marketing, but so many people associate that sort of stuff with just the tactics, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the LinkedIns of the world. Rather than diving into that sort of stuff, I'd break your activity down into these 5 stages. Awareness is making people aware of your brand. Consideration is that they're aware of your brand and now they're looking to interact with your brand and look to eventually purchase your thing. Purchase is all about making the purchase process as easy as possible. Retention is keeping the folks who have already purchased and making them rebuy. And then advocacy is the stage where they become your biggest fans and they do your marketing for you. So rather than thinking of personal branding as one large concept, I would encourage you to think about it in these 5 stages and think about how you can use personal branding in different ways at these different stages. For example, at the awareness stage, you may do like a post on LinkedIn, which is very general. But at the consideration stage, you may send a tweet out with a 10% off discount voucher from your own Twitter profile, something like that. At the retention and advocacy stages, this is really, really crucial, because imagine that moment when you get a message from someone you really admire, just saying, I appreciate you, or something like that. those types of things are going to be the type of things which turn people into your biggest fans and also your biggest marketing channel. Number 6, analysis. Personal branding shouldn't, even though it's a long-term activity, it shouldn't be without analysis. So I'll apply the same old marketing metrics that you would usually do to any old campaign, potentially with less pressure than you usually would apply to yourself. But there is one platform that I'd really recommend for your LinkedIn analysis, which is Shield Analytics. I know that this guy, John Asperian, one of Lenka's favorite people, is really, really, really good at LinkedIn stuff. And he sort of speaks about Shield Analytics quite regularly. So I'd recommend A, checking out John, and then B, checking out Shield Analytics, because he's really hot on analytics from his LinkedIn activity. Finally, did I mention chill out? It's one of these things that people spend all their time like just absolutely looking for results tomorrow, but then forgetting that this is a long-term thing. Personal branding and any branding activity is something that's going to take a long time to ingrain in the mind of people. So just cut yourself some slack. Just enjoy the process, enjoy engaging with the community, and enjoy getting sort of famous for the things that you want to be. I think it's really important that people take this pressure off themselves, because ultimately it's not going to be a short-term win. Now, I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to breeze through this section quite quickly. But I think the number one opportunity for LinkedIn right now is, for personal branding right now, is on LinkedIn. And the reason for that is that it's an upside down social media network, which means to say, presently, while every other social media network is cutting reach like anything, then LinkedIn is giving it away, and giving it away strongly. LinkedIn, whereas on Facebook, an organic post from your page, Lenka will know the stat better than me, but I think it's like 0.05% of your audience will see it. On LinkedIn, you can very easily get more folks to see your posts than you even have following you. Reach, I speak about reach, and it is in effect an imprecise and vanity driven metric, but what it also is an opportunity. It's potential. So if one person sees your post, then you never quite know how that one conversation will going to change your life or change your business life. So even though I won't get hung up on it and say my post got 10,000 likes, 10,000 views today or something like that, as if it's something special, what I would say is that reach is potential. And that goes down to the concept that marketing still remains both an art and a science. It's not just completely one or the other. There is an element of magic in marketing still. Some quick tips for LinkedIn. Don't worry about posting all the time. Wait till you have something useful to say. So many people put the pressure on themselves to post every day, and inevitably the quality goes down while the quantity goes up. When you have something useful to say, probably aligned to your content pillars, then post it. Don't overthink it either, though. The flip side is that if you overthink these things, then you'll never do it. And I have so many conversations with people where they're like, oh, I'd like to post on LinkedIn, but I don't know what to post. The flip side to this, though, is practice makes perfect. And if you don't post anything, or you only post once every 3 months or something like that, you're not going to be learning either. So be prepared to have a few public failures, but just take those opportunities just to practice, learn what works, learn what doesn't work, and get better over the course of time. Stick to your pillars. Now, what you'll see on LinkedIn at the moment presently is a whole load of posts about COVID and stuff like that. I mean, topical is really good because it is the type of stuff that is top of the mind for most people. So it is likely to be the type of thing that will resonate with people because that's what's relevant in their lives right now. But the flip side to this is try to avoid being opportunistic. I don't know about you, but I think if I see another top 10 tips for surviving COVID or whatever it may be, I think I'll scream at this point. So, and these are coming from businesses which are generally very, very tangential to to COVID in the first place. I don't really care if Allbirds, my shoe manufacturer, have an opinion on COVID. I care if the NHS does, but you got to have that balance and sort of know your pillars And when you know your pillars, you can go, okay, this is something I can comment on because this is something that is relevant to my personal brand. Don't get lost in the metrics, because at the moment it's going to be a long-term opportunity, and particularly right now. One thing I'd emphasize at this point is that a post on LinkedIn on a typical day for me will probably get anywhere between 70 and 150 likes these days, but that's been 4 years effort put into that. But the other day I posted something on LinkedIn which got 25 likes, but drove my business forward far more than those 70 to 120 likes. So I think you need to take it with an idea of understanding why you're doing what you're doing. If you're going back to the place of saying that high level motivation, if it's fame, then you're probably going to be emphasizing on likes and stuff like that. But if it's fortune or driving your business forward, then you don't really care how many likes you get. You care about how it's driving your business forward. So just know why you're doing what you're doing. When it comes to copywriting, you is one of the most powerful words in marketing. So rather than spending the time saying, I think this, I think that, flip the narrative. Say, you know what is really annoying about coronavirus. It's how you have to stay inside. That's so much more powerful than saying, I hate coronavirus, I have to stay inside, which suddenly becomes a moan rather than a conversation. So always flip the narrative, if you can, in all these things, to say, how is that relevant to the audience that you're looking to target and speak with? Next, find folks you admire on LinkedIn, copy them, but copy them in your own style. If you're seeing people who are absolutely rocking it on these social media platforms, then copy them, because they've obviously worked something out, but do it in your own style. Just don't copy and paste someone else's stuff and pass it off as your own. Take the time to understand why they're being successful, and you can look to utilize some of their strategies in your own stuff. Don't expect the same results as they're going to be getting, because they're going to be getting it over the course of many years. But if you see someone doing something successful, that's a great starting point in personal branding. Video is great, full stop, and just do it. Honestly, so many people get hung up about posting stuff on social media and stuff like that. Just do what you're comfortable with, but just do something. The fact, if you're going to be sitting there, like, people can't react to nothing. So if you're going to do something and you deeply care about the opportunity of personal branding offers, then just do something. Just do it. Now, last slide-ish. We can't sort of give this talk without acknowledging the present circumstances. So I think the number one thing right now is that, given the current COVID situation, now really is the time to be giving, helping, and being kind. I would argue that that's probably been the case for the entirety of history, and will continue to be for business forever. But if there's one time in particular that's really, really true, it's especially right now. There's a whole load of people struggling. There's also a whole load of people who are feeling okay and sort of looking to do something about it. But in either case, now is the time to be giving, helping, and being kind. I've actually started to think of COVID as like the Christmas no one wants. There's a whole load of people not working, but everyone is looking for that opportunity to being kind and look after each other. So, potentially if you sort of take that kind of attitude and just sort of say, what can I do to help other people? Then that would be quite useful. So to sum up, personal branding is a horrible word for a useful thing. This thing requires you to be you, but you can layer strategy onto it if you want to. And that's me. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to give huge virtual applause to Joe. Thank you so much. It's brilliant. So many great tips and tricks, and I was just taking pictures is crazy and trying to tweet is crazy. And obviously we have the recording, we will have your slides. So thank you so much. If you have a question, because there's only a handful of you, just kind of wave at me in the screen and I will unmute you and you can go ahead with your questions. Anyone has a question already? I can see Simone. Okay, Simone, go for it.
My question is, if it was, I think he's using a paid account or LinkedIn, and there are a lot of us, because we use different channel, or we haven't got a budget, we don't pay. Can you just maybe tell us what it meant for you to get the paid account, because for some people it's not really required, even doing personal brand.
For sure. So I'd argue that the majority of people don't need a paid account at all. I know that John Asperian, as an example, has a free account, and he always has, and he's done incredible work and has built an incredible following. The key benefits, as far as I see it, for having a paid account are access to some of the, James will probably know about this being a recruiter, but there's stuff like the Sales Navigator tool, which does make finding people you want to speak to quite a lot easier. It does make those filtering a lot easier, and it also enables you to see a lot more folks in the results. But to be honest, if you're finding that LinkedIn is serving your purpose right now, I really wouldn't say that there's any big benefits to getting a premium account. It certainly won't improve, so far as I'm aware at least, your results in regard to how well your posts do and stuff like that. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about getting a premium account personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As long as you really leverage the free account and you feel like it's limiting you, then consider paying more. But as long as you really did not leverage and use the LinkedIn free for as much as you can, then I wouldn't worry about anything else. Next question, I think I saw Claire raising her hand. So Claire, go for it.
You talked about, which I think is a real kindness actually, is if you haven't got anything useful, helpful, interesting, engaging to say, don't do it. Work on, and I will go back to those pillars, and I'm going to look into that because that looked very, very helpful. So thank you for that. But does that mean that you don't then operate any kind of social media calendar? So you wouldn't post particularly on a certain, because I know a lot of analytics say, work out your audience, then look at what your engagement day, time, minute, hour, etc. So what does that look like in your terms, Joe?
So I do a lot of my posting on the fly, but that's just because that's when inspiration strikes, and generally if I get a thought, I'd like to share it with the world. I do use Content Cow to schedule posts, and I wouldn't say that there's been any sort of correlation between how well a post is done when I scheduled it and when I just posted it on the fly. I think with personal branding in particular, you can of course optimize these things, but my personal opinion is if something's valuable, then it will probably fly. If it's not valuable, then it won't. And you can of course look to optimize these things, but personally the optimization that I'd be looking to do is more based on the copy and the length of the copy and stuff like that, rather than necessarily the time of day. That would be where I'd start off, and you can sort of do time of day sort of stuff later on.
I would add to this that what often I would do with clients or stuff like that is we would do a brain dump. So when you have some ideas for content, and it could be in the moment, so you can keep them in Content Cow now has lots of functionalities for like Content Hub. So we would create a Content Hub post where whenever the inspiration strikes, and it's not something that it's so timely that it only would be relevant to publish right now, then we would just add it to the Content Hub, and we would reuse it whenever there is a gap or whenever we have a space in the content calendar. So we would still try to plan a little bit, and we would still have different tags and topics to see the balance of the content. But whenever the inspiration strikes, especially for personal branding style, you want to write it down, but you don't necessarily hit press and go live straight away. You can then add it to your schedule whenever.
Yeah, it must be said. Sometimes I wish I hadn't pressed send. So it does work both ways.
Yeah. I've seen Bex raising her hand. Go for it.
Just on that, I've heard some people say that if you post through something like Hootsuite or whatever, Hootsuite's the one we happen to use at the moment, that Facebook and Instagram maybe change where you come on the rankings, like you don't get seen as much as if you posted it in Facebook or in Instagram or something. Is that the case?
I don't know, to be honest. Lenka's shaking her head, so I don't think it is, but I would refer to the expert here.
Yeah, no, I've read lots of studies, and every now and then there's someone who's trying to create the myth that if you use scheduling tools, you will get disadvantage and you will get lower reach. None of the studies that I actually read that uses data, and Hootsuite done it and Content Call done it. Obviously, all the platforms that are wanting you to spend money on their tool to allow you to schedule have done a study like this using data. And I don't see a difference. I don't see any disadvantage on using scheduling tools for my clients. I see if the content is great, that's it. It's just about the quality. If you put out great content that even on Facebook you can get a great reach organically, if it's a good post that actually people care about and want to see. If it's a crap post that you put out there just because you have in a schedule that you will post 3 times a day, then obviously no posting directly or anything will save that kind of a post.
I can't emphasize that enough. Like, if you're doing that, you know, and I want to say this as a person who has done it. If your strategy is to post 3 times a day, then you know, it's not worth doing that. Base it on the quality rather than the quantity of the content that you send out. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, fantastic. I've seen Jim and then James.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. Is there any evidence to suggest that if you work with a group of people, I forget what the term is, but you're going to post a specific time each day, and you've got like 8 or 10 people in the group who then like and comment and share if it's appropriate for them, that if you can do that within an hour or so, it gets the visibility much higher?
So there's a term for that which they call engagement pods. I mean, so there's two levels. So the first is, you know, I think there's quite a harmless activity, which is like, hey mate, do you mind sharing this, or do you mind, you know, commenting on this, and that kind of thing. I think that's reasonably commonplace, and personally, I think this might counteract what Lenka's expert advice is, so I'd be interested to hear her opinion. But I think there probably is an element of a boost depending on the people that interact. So I'm pretty sure, and I can't confirm this because LinkedIn will never tell you, but if you get the same 10 people liking your content all the time, they're probably going to, you know, sort of dampen down the effect quite quickly. But if, you know, you do get someone interact on your post as a general rule, then you're going to get more people to see it. Pods come in, which is an example of quite a malicious way of doing it, where folks join these groups and they basically guarantee that everyone in this group will like and comment on another piece of content. I'd really avoid that, and I guess it goes back to that point that I'd really encourage everybody here to, you know, make your content stand on its own 2 feet a little bit, rather than look to sort of artificially boost it through other means, because I can speak from experience more than giving advice. You know, my own content has done the same, where, you know, over the course of time, I've put it out to the world, people have chosen to engage with it. And now, you know, it's in a place which is quite strong and healthy, but that's been done through learning. That's been done through, you know, just making the content sing by itself.
Right, that ties up with my experience, because I joined a pod of about 8 of us for about a couple of months, 2-3 months, and we worked quite hard, and it became quite hard work actually. There's a lot of work involved when you've got just that many people. And we are questioning, I stopped it about a month ago, and we are questioning those results on there, because there is no actual definite improvement, because mostly it's the same, you know, 6 to 8 people on there within a very short time. There was initially, it seemed to work, and then it seems to just stabilize and drop off, really.
For sure. I'm not surprised to hear that, to be honest. So
yeah, I would say it really depends on the quality of the pod. So if it's more genuine, where you really curate the people and you kind of agree with your friends and colleagues that you want to give it a try, but we will actually put time and effort into the commenting, because LinkedIn is all about comments. Like is great, but especially if we're talking LinkedIn, but pretty much any platform, comment is the #1 kind of engagement you want to get. And you want to get like meaningful comments. You want actually someone to read your posts, to watch your video, to pay attention and hear their thought. That allows you to go back to and reply and follow up a question and keep conversation. What is a challenge with pods? Because out of nowhere, there's lots of content that you want to comment on, blah, blah, blah. And there will be very basic, like, great job, good post, very...
Exactly. They're a waste of time. Yeah, complete waste of time.
You don't, again, it's not about the quantity of the comments and engagement. It's about the quality. So I'd rather you get three comments that are genuine, but people will go back and forth with then the conversation in the comments, rather than get 10 comments that are like thumbs up. Well,
yeah,
awesome job.
Quite. Yeah,
so,
that's my experience as well. I was just checking what your perception was on it.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the sort of objective of why you're doing things in the first place. You know, because it may be that you get one like on one of your posts, but that person becomes a client, and you know, in that case, then that post is suddenly very successful, but just on a very different metric. So I think it's important to keep that sort of stuff in mind.
One trick that often will be used on LinkedIn, especially on LinkedIn, that it's recommended in a reasonable measures. It's that in the main copy of the post or in the comments, you will mention one or two people that you believe will have something to say. I would say use it here and there. Don't overuse it. Don't always use the same people. And, you know, just sometimes double check with the people if it's okay with them. Or if there is a post that you really, really want to get more attention on, then just copy the link and drop a private message on WhatsApp and LinkedIn to a couple of people to be like, I just published this. It would really mean a world to me if you could engage with it and share it. And, you know, again, handpick the people you really believe that it will be relevant and kind of drive the engagement this way rather than joining a generic bot.
For sure.
Yeah. So genuine engagement and genuine content all the time. It rules.
Absolutely.
Stop messing about. Literally, stop messing about. Yeah.
Stop messing about, Jim.
I have a month ago. Yes.
Okay, we'll hand over to James now.
So my question is more on the sort of copywriting side of things, and sort of tips and gems to kind of generate a bit more participation and engagement. So in your talk, Joe, you referenced using you rather than I's, and something that I've noticed makes a difference is if you've got a body of content and you've got a question in it, if you ask that question at the beginning where to capture people's attention rather than at the end, you do get a lot more participation. Are there any other copywriting tips that from your experience, generate a better response rate at all?
For sure. So the role of the first line in your copy is to get someone to read the second line, and so on and so forth. So once you start taking that kind of attitude to your writing, you stop wasting words. You know, you stop saying, you know, I don't know, 3 sentences of gumph, and then you get into the main body of it. To your point about questions, I think that's a really good way of getting engagement. But one thing I'd be quite mindful of is that it's also quite clear what people are doing when they write at the end of their LinkedIn status, do you agree? You know, you know, and it's just a load of rubbish, you know, and I personally, whenever I see that, it drives me nuts, because it just looks quite, it looks quite needy. In terms of copy, I think then you is a really great thing. I think going back to the first line, that's the most important line in your copy. And I'd probably say that I don't know the exact stats, but if you look at the characters that are before the see more on LinkedIn, making the most of that opportunity to engage people in those beginning couple of sentences are going to be the types of things that are really relevant. I would avoid posting links on LinkedIn personally, as this kills your reach. And beyond this, I would also just advise to be, I mean, it's literally in your name. So human by name, human by nature. I would just absolutely encourage you just to share your experiences in a very real way. One of the things that I always have in my mind whenever I'm writing a LinkedIn status is find the story, find the story, find the story. So you know, rather than saying, tonight we have a webinar with Dave Gerhardt, my story is that for the past, so, you know, the sentence could have been, tonight we have a webinar with Dave Gerhardt, starts at 6:30. Instead, the sentence started, I've been following Dave Gerhardt for the past 4 years, and through observing his work, I feel like he's one of the world's best marketers. He's changed my life, having looked at his work. Now, suddenly that's gone from a very sort of feature-driven sort of bit of text to a story. It's something that people can engage with. Even if they don't care about the webinar, they may agree with the admiration for another person or, you know, the great work. So just finding the story. So what we've got, speak about you. So speak about your target audience. We've got don't ask stupid questions, but do ask some questions. Don't use links, and find the story. I think if you start doing those 4 things, plus the goal of the first line is to make the person read the second line, you've got 5 things right there, which would hopefully be really useful. And after that point, I think it's a case of optimization. I think going back to the point about target audience, it's also just about understanding what they want to read. It's not necessarily about you all the time. So understand what they want to read, and I think that will be you off to a winner.
Cool. Off the back of the opening sort of sentence to grab the attention, you'll often find that a lot of people who publish content will then leave enough white space to get people to read, see more, which seems like a bit of a cheap tactic to get your views up. But what are your opinions on that?
Like, just in general, I find whether it's, you know, pods or, you know, leaving spaces, or do you agree at the end of LinkedIn statuses, or, you know, Lenka made a really good point about tagging other people in, but, you know, when people put in like a whole bank of like 40 other people and stuff like that, all these things that are quite clear ways to drive up their own sort of reach and engagement. I find these, you know, it has the opposite effect for me. I just find them quite repulsive to find, you know, without meaning to sound like it's the worst thing in the world, because there are far worse things in the world, but it has the opposite effect. So basically any sort of tactic which is like gaming the system, I just try to move away from it, frankly. And it sort of goes back down to that sort of thing where I'm just trying to have a conversation with people I know, you know, and I wouldn't try and cheat in a conversation with my friends. I don't know how, you know, if I stood opposite my friend, you know, if I suddenly started speaking really weird because I thought that would like make them engage with me, I wouldn't start doing that. So why would I do that in real on my LinkedIn presence? So I just try to avoid any of those things, because I think it just comes off in the opposite direction. You know, and best of luck to people who sort of get some success from it, but that's just not going to be how I choose to do it personally.
Cool. No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. If we have any other questions, then just raise your hand. I have one, and that's about video. You mentioned video. You said how important video is. And I'm curious if you have any tips, or if you've learned what type of videos, what content in the videos, and obviously, how would you suggest people who are not so happy and comfortable in video to just get started?
Sure. So some specifics. I always try to keep videos below 2 minutes if possible. I always subtitle. So there's a video on my LinkedIn profile about how you can subtitle your LinkedIn videos, but it's really crucial that you do. If you keep your video below 2 minutes, you could then get it transcribed for $2.50 on rev.com, which is next to nothing, but will absolutely boost how people choose to engage with your stuff. Third, there's a note to make about how LinkedIn shows your views on videos. So on your standard text posts, you'll see a view counter on LinkedIn, which sort of says this post has been seen 2,000 times or something like that. Now that counter goes up if someone has just scrolled past your content, if they've read it, or whether they've scrolled. A video is counted as a view if they've viewed it for 3 seconds. So when you start doing video on LinkedIn, you immediately get very demoralized, because suddenly your view counts go all the way down, because suddenly instead of a text post getting 3,000 views or whatever it may be, then your videos get like 600 or something like that. And you're like, what gives? That doesn't make any sense, and that's not fair. the truth is that those 600 views are going to be far more meaningful than those 3,000 that you get from a text post, because people have chosen to engage with you for a longer amount of time. In terms of video production and stuff like that, I'd really recommend getting a tripod. Those folks who are still doing the shaky cam videos, you know, where they sort of stand in the park or whatever like that and kind of hold it at arm's length, it's still horrible. So please don't do that. It's making me seasick. After that point, the most important thing about LinkedIn video is going to be the audio rather than the video quality. So if you invest in a lapel mic, I've got several and they cost like £9.99 off Amazon or something like that. It may take a little bit longer to get to you than before right now, but you can still get them. Just plug it into your phone and clip it to your lapel there or to your collar, and that will take your production to the next level. If you want to get really, really fancy, so you got your tripod, you got your microphone, you can start engaging in like getting, like I've got a camera now, which, you know, for me is good, but that's only because I'm a nerd. So I'd actually say that the biggest thing that's going to make a bigger difference to your video quality is going to be your lighting rather than the quality of your camera, because on your camera phone these days, like everyone's got something that is good enough. In terms of getting over the anxiety, I think it kind of goes back to that point about just do it to a certain extent. You kind of just have to break that point of being comfortable with it and just put something out there. And it's amazing what happens that if you do something once, then the second time it just gets a lot easier. And then the third time it becomes a little bit normal. And then by the time you've done it 12, 15 times, it's like, okay, I'm just doing another video. You don't even need to publish these things, but the act of even creating it in the first place is a really good way to sort of break the duck. One thing which hopefully might come out of this whole bit of horribleness is that hopefully we're all a little bit more used to being on camera. So maybe, you know, now is an opportunity to sort of say, you know, as the world is changing, I'm also going to start doing video. One thing I'd add finally to video is that I post nearly daily on LinkedIn, which is neither here nor there. I've just got things I like sharing. It becomes an outlet for me. I like write it almost as if it's a diary. But the posts that people come to me and sort of say, either that was meaningful or that's what I remember, were not necessarily the posts that were the most liked. They were not necessarily the posts which have been most viewed, but they were always my video content. And I think that's because it just gives so much more emotion, personality to your content than written communication ever could. Even the subtleties, you know, it just gets picked up. So that would be that. And then the final thing is, if you can be bothered, then editing the ums and the ahs and the pauses and stuff like that, I'm sure I've done plenty over the course of this talk, then that does make a difference as well, because it sort of engages the reader and keeps things short and snappy rather than sort of feeling like it's a stream of consciousness. So that's a long answer to a short question, Linka, but is that useful?
It's brilliant, absolutely awesome. One idea that came to my mind that a while back, there used to be a thing called Video Reply Tuesday on Twitter, and lots of people, or in general, would use Twitter video because it's still kind of on Twitter underutilized, but they would use it as a simple, very quick reply. Instead of just replying to a tweet by typing it, they would just record a very quick video to say, hey, thank you for your tweet, you know, enjoyed it, appreciate that. And it's very raw and very natural to do that, and people really, it can take your then engagement to the next level if you can do that. And the same way, what I've learned that really helps with getting comfortable on video is doing more Instagram stories, because again, they disappear, they don't need to be perfect, but you just get used to being on camera, holding your phone. Yes, there is more of the shaky ones, but again, they're more kind of in the moment, unpolished, unprepared kind of videos. But I found it very helpful for getting just over the initial fear and anxiety and a little bit of lack of confidence on camera. Do we have more questions for Joe? Anyone else wants to raise a hand I've missed? I can't see any hands. If not, then I would say huge thank you for everyone for joining us. Huge round of applause for Joe for brilliant talk. Absolutely loved it.